And for the last 7 weeks, I'm sure you guys know, you've been following us with recruiting and new staff and getting everybody organized. It's been about as busy as 7 weeks as I've had probably in my life, much less just my career in coaching. But it's been good. To a certain extent, it's been fun. It's been interesting. We went through a period of, I think the number was 44 visits in 17 days, players coming in and out. And we were able to gather what are 32 new players, I believe, that are on our roster right now. When we get started in June, that number could go to 45 real quick. So essentially a third of your roster, as you guys know from following, and getting to know the staff and staff getting to know the players getting to know each other and the system and so on and so forth, and getting adjusted to the culture. It's been a learning process, but it's been good. So we're starting to get our bearings a little bit with the coaches and them all getting moved and getting to this part of the country. The players getting adjusted a little bit. They're in, I guess now going into third week of preparation and getting ready for spring ball. So now we're back on the recruiting trail. Not that that's ever changed, but what would be the typical recruiting trail for high school players. That has started now, as well as portal still going on, what's left of the portal. So we're working hard every day, moving forward. Gets a little bit easier every day. We get a chance to meet with the players and get to know each other. And we're excited about what would be spring ball, which starts in about 2 months. Get a chance to get out there and kind of find out who we are and where we're at, what hand we've been dealt. And then we're going to have a spring finale on the 19th of April. Give us a chance to get out here in the stadium. First chance we've had to get out in the stadium where we hadn't had repairs going on. So we'll get a chance to get out there on the 19th, and it's early in preparation, but we're planning on having a 30-minute or so fan access before the practice, and then 30-minute or so afterwards. Make it easier on the families if they get there early and want to get down and take some pictures with the players or sign autographs, they can. And if they want to wait till afterwards, moms that have little kids that are there before or after, the kids don't want to wait till afterwards, they can do it before. And give the fans a chance to see some of the new players, get a chance to see some of the coaches on the field. So we got a lot of things scheduled, looking forward to it. And as I said, it's an exciting time for everybody, particularly myself.
Mike, what would your message be to your fans? Because like 7 weeks ago, you had that sit down with the regents and all that. So I think everybody, if I'm a ticket buyer, I want to know my head coach is happy, he's engaged, he really, really wants to coach the program, and everything behind the curtain is cool now. So what would your message be, just to explain where your head is and where everybody is now?
Well, the first thing is I didn't have a sit down with the regents. I mean, I don't know if you meant to say that, but I don't have sit downs with regents. That's not protocol. But Dr. Shrum and Chad and I had really good conversations about the future, about the portal, about NIL, about revenue sharing, things that are very important in dealing with college athletics today. And it gave me an opportunity to be a part of the future. You know, times are changing, we all know that. And so it really gave us a chance to visit and look to the future and what's best for our athletic department, and with me, obviously, particularly football. But once we've accomplished that and then went through the process of hiring coaches and new staff and trying to rebuild our roster, you know, one thing I failed to say earlier is, you know, we had a very senior-dominated roster this year. We knew we were going to be in a rebuilding stage numbers-wise based on the players we had this year. And so I think that the fans will be really excited about Oklahoma State football. My energy level, my commitment to Oklahoma State football is stronger every year. You know, I think at some point I always feel like I'll get to where I tire some and it kind of wears on me, but I've said this a number of times. I still wake up in the middle of the night and football is on my mind. Unfortunately, at my age, when I have to get up and go to the bathroom at the middle of the night, walking toward the bathroom and walking back from the bathroom, football is on my mind. I wish it wasn't, but it is. When I shower in the morning, football is on my mind. So my energy and passion for where we're at, and you guys have covered me specifically. You know, this press conference is not about me. This is about a team and, you know, our future here at Oklahoma State. But you guys know that the season that we had last year is not going to sit well with me. That's just not going to be good. But I get it. We're moving forward. Sometimes that happens. You know, I've been fortunate enough to be the head coach here a long time. And we had a season that we didn't like. But, you know, maybe sometimes that's going to happen. But so my message to them, that was a long answer, is that there's a tremendous amount of commitment in our organization. And it starts at the very top. And the one thing that I tried to accomplish in putting a staff together was a group of guys that had energy, passion, and could give us some diversity in dealing with players in the time of college football that we're dealing with now, and move forward at a very fast pace. And I was very fortunate to come up with two big-time coordinators, in my opinion, and then let them do their jobs. Both of those guys had a big role in the staff that we hired on each side of the ball. They wanted to bring in coaches that were familiar with their terminology and their system, and I agreed with that. So once I was able to accomplish those two hires, which the fans, I'm sure, would want to know, I allowed them to have a big input in how do you want to fill out your staff on that side of the ball. Because ultimately, these are the things that we and/or I want to get accomplished on offense. We and/or I want to get accomplished on defense. And then you take it and run with it. I'll follow your lead.
So did you give yourself some time, or did you even have time to really work on recovering psychologically, emotionally? Because you've never had a season like that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to be honest with you, Bill. I didn't have to recover emotionally or psychologically. I've said this to you guys many times before. I get it. I'm here every day. I know what's going on. So when we were going through a difficult stretch, that process, I guess maybe what you're referring to, is going on with me every day. And so I don't get to a point where I feel like I really need to recover, because I can dive deep into work and what I think is best. And I have a tremendous amount of confidence in my ability to take care of business, and so it doesn't really affect me in that way.
Mike, you hired a new football staff, but you've also kind of reshaped, starting with hiring Kenyatta last year, Kenyatta Wright. You've kind of reshaped the whole program and the way it's built. It got tested because you had to go out and get a lot of portal kids. Do you like the way you've built the program for the modern day or the trending form of college football we're dealing with?
Yeah, so in my opinion, and this is a learning process, and I think it is for everybody in the country, I would challenge and be willing to listen to anybody that thinks they have this figured out at this point and what's best. But we have a number of people that have worked at this every day. And, you know, you had mentioned Kenyatta. Kenyatta's job is 100 times more difficult than we thought it was 6 months ago, based on the way this is panning out. And Todd Bradford in the scouting department and what he's doing in his office is 100 times more than what we thought it would be 6 months ago. Just in the way that this process is developed over the last few months. So all of us knew this about college football. And we can talk about NIL, we can talk about portal all we want. There's not really any given direction or parameters in it at this time. So we're learning on the run. And we have a business department that we've talked about that we brought Kenyatta in, and he works with the directors that we have upstairs. He works with Todd, he works with Rod, he works with Danielle, he works with Rob Glass, and that's really the board and the decisions that we have to make moving forward. So the one answer that I think is fair to give is that that side of what we do now is magnified way more than we ever thought it would be, and that's based on the young men that we're dealing with now all have their own agents. So there's not much communication with recruit or portal recruit with coach. It's communication with agents. Very similar to what coaches across the country in sports have representatives that speak with presidents and athletic directors. They don't speak directly to him. Well, that has now taken place in our game.
Mike, one thing you've had here for a long time is stability. Long-time coaches, and
Culture, players.
Culture, all that. You've talked about the benefits of that.
Mm-hmm.
Now all of a sudden we got wholesale changes, virtually new roster, brand new coaching staff. What are the pros and cons of such a makeover of people who had been here so long?
Well, and the time I'm talking about waking up and thinking about things, that's the one thing, because in my opinion, over 19, 20 years here, we've developed into a big-time college football organization based on continuity and development and Rob Glass and his plan and bringing young men in and expect them to play in year 3, 4, and 5. And to a certain extent, we could still have some of that, but it's not going to be as much. We're not so naive to think that that's going to be that way from moving forward. So we have to deal with the hand that we're all being dealt in college football, and that essentially free agency can happen at either time, at any time now. It used to be a portal window. Now I guess there's not a portal window. So our coaching staff, what I've asked those guys to do is to put their heads together in both rooms, and I'm excluding Sean and Joe in special teams. It's not as big of an impact there as it is on offense and defense, in the fact that they almost have to think a little bit like the NFL in the standpoint that if you were to pick a player up off waivers or off somebody's practice squad and you have a game in 8 days, you got to get him ready to play. Or why would we pick him up? It's a little bit like that now, in our opinion, not as much because we still have more time. But as I said, we have 32 new players that are here currently, and we need to get them prepared that when we start spring football, they can go out and play and they can practice and give us an idea of what we have on both sides of the ball. Compared to in the past, that might be an 18-month process. Now it's going to happen much quicker.
With the
You've hired.
was it any difficulty trying to get?
I didn't hear what your first part said.
Just with the coordinators, was there any difficulty trying to hire new coordinators with everything going on in the off season? Reports saying that you might get fired or
people were knocking the door down to come here. And the most difficult thing for me was to weed through it. And a lot of them are my friends in the past, and a lot of them are my friends who have friends of theirs that wanted these jobs. And I haven't had to do much of that over my career. I've been very fortunate. So it's difficult because when you've been in the game as long as I have, you have a lot of friends out there. And again, I say friends. I don't talk to anybody, but I guess people that would say they're my friend. And they want jobs, and they're recommending other people. And we had NFL guys, very, very recognizable college guys that wanted this job. Wanted these jobs. So it was really easy for me to try to narrow it down to a certain number of guys and then make a decision. And then from that point, as I said earlier, I allowed the coordinators to have a really big role in who they wanted on their staff.
How did Grantham get on your radar, and what ultimately made him the right guy?
So I don't know how many people to bring into this, but I also don't want to tell you something that's not true. So I visited with some pretty prominent coaches, and these guys have extensive backgrounds on the defensive side of the ball. And so I asked them in particular, who would you hire if you were looking to hire a defense coordinator? And I trust these guys, and particularly one that said, if I was coaching, I would hire this guy to be my coordinator. That's how it happened. I didn't know that guy. I didn't know Todd. I didn't even know where he was. And then I started the process and got involved in communications and had a very extensive interview with him and so on and so forth. But that's how it happened.
When you did your research and met with him, what did you like that made you say follow up and decide to bring him in as the coordinator?
Came very highly recommended from people that I trust and understand defense. When I spent time with him, very well organized, walked in. I mean, we had a 4 or 5 hour interview. I don't know what it was, but laid everything out in front of me. Had a plan for this. This is what I want to do. This is how I'm going to do it. These are guys I would like to hire. You know, you want to vet them, whatever. I'm not saying it's perfect, but this is what we want to do. This is how I want to do it. Just laid everything out. So essentially, when I walked away from the interview, he convinced me that what I needed was a head coach on defense. And I was very upfront in communicating that to these guys. And then Todd, as you're asking about, and he convinced me that he can be the head coach on defense and I can let him do his job. Which is what I want to do.
You've hired coordinators in the past and maintained some position coaches. Was that a thought, or did you feel like you needed to have a fully clean slate?
So the coordinators wanted to hire people that understood their system and they were comfortable with their language. So I understand the question you're asking me. It was more of that than it was me saying, I don't want these guys. And that's fairly common now. And so I felt the best move for us was to allow these guys to do their job. And they felt more comfortable in that area. So we have new systems on both sides of the ball, and they speak that language. They understand the terminology, and it should reduce the amount of time that it takes for the staff to get on the same page. Because I think the quicker they get on the same page, they'll be able to get the information to the players.
When we talk about, like Barry asked about the continuity that you've had really over your entire 20 years, is that scary to have so many new guys around you now in these positions?
Not really. And you guys know from being around me, the very most difficult thing, this was the most, Bill asked this, and I guess I didn't get into this part, but this was the most difficult December in my career because I don't like letting people go. I don't like affecting people's families, kids, lifestyle. I just don't like that. But in my situation, tough decisions have to be made. And so the continuity of college football players being in location for the duration is a factor. And then I think that allowing them to bring coaches in that understood their system will help with that continuity. So what I'm saying is, so if we hire a coordinator and then we go out and start trying to find 5 other guys to come in with him, then we automatically don't have any continuity. So Coach Grantham had a number of guys that he wanted to bring with him. And so that continuity that you guys are referring to kind of already was ready defensively. Now, Meach had guys that he wanted to bring, and it wasn't a 100% clean sweep like it was defensively, but the majority of his staff are guys that he wanted in that room also.
Mike, in your conversations with President Schrum, with Chad, I know it sounds crazy to say, like you maybe had to build back trust since you've been here such a long time, but was there any element of that where you needed to sort of build that trust or kind of mend any relationships with them moving forward?
Dr. Schrum and Chad and I had really positive conversations on revenue sharing, NIL, that it's a challenge for everybody in college football, in my opinion. And so the large majority of those conversations were, what do we need to do moving forward? And I think it'd be fair in saying this. I think they understand. I mean, football has to be successful for the athletic department to function. And so it's a very important discussion that took place. And it also gave me a chance to give back to NIL, because I'm not the smartest guy in the world, but I know how important NIL is right now. Whether we like it or not, we need NIL funds. We need fans. We need to sell tickets. We need the stadium to be full. All those things are very important. And so, I'm not on social media. I don't really read a lot that has to do with sports and stuff. I'm more into politics and foreign affairs and stuff than I am that part of it. But the point being is, I think it got blown out of proportion in an area that just kind of made for good news versus the amount of time that we had that were really productive conversations and what can we do moving forward in this landscape of college football.
I'm going to ask Coach Meacham this, but I wanted to get your take. Because Doug coached with you, he understands power, play action concepts. He's big in the spread. He's had a lot of people he's been around that were spread coaches. With the changing landscape of offensive football, doing a little bit of both, did that make him, as much as any, the right guy because he understands both concepts?
So it's different for me on offense. I had to check my zipper real quick. You ever do that? I mean, make sure, you know what I'm saying? Well, it's just like, you get older, I just want to make sure. So with offense, it was different than defense, because defense is not my world. And offense, I have a feel for what I think that we should be moving forward, but that's going to be dictated based on who your players are and what's the strength, who can score points, how do you get them the ball. Doug is versed in a lot of things, right? He understands 10 personnel. He understands 11 personnel. He understands 12 personnel. He can fling it. He can spread it out. He can run it. He played offensive line. He was here with us back when we were running the tray formation. He's been around a lot of football. He understands a lot of different things. That's why I was really high on what he could bring to the table. He loves Oklahoma State. I trust him. I know his family, and he has a great relationship with high school coaches in the state of Texas. His very outgoing, magnetic personality that people like, and that is also important for us in our ability to recruit, because we're only as good as the players that are in our room. I mean, coaches are coaches, but good players are going to help us become more successful coaches.
15 years ago, 12 years ago, you were winning and controlling games with your offensive line, and it just hasn't consistently been like that since. So is that kind of part of your message to your new staff is, I want that again. I want to take two-star. I don't even know if the development part of this is still what it used to be, where you could take an Andrew Lewis and get 50 games out of him. But what is your message to your new staff with regard to what you want to see up front?
We would love to do that. Okay, so when we were doing that, we had the ability to do that. The game was different then. We were set up in that way with the concepts we were using. We had those type of linemen. We had those backs, Keith Toston, guys like that were built for that, Dez. It varies year to year. And the interesting thing moving forward, I think, for all of us in college football is we could look drastically different year one versus year three from now moving forward based on what's available and the number of players that we're able to keep in our system. So our challenge now, and I visited with the staff this morning in the staff room, and I've said this multiple times, this is just my opinion. The challenge now as a staff is what can we do to make sure that we still have punctuality, attention to detail, discipline, accountability, and structure in our system, but we also have a system in place that players want to stay here. Because I still believe that that will help create continuity and make you a better football team, even with the free agency that's involved today. That's the real challenge.
You mentioned twice there that you talked a lot about revenue sharing in those conversations. Can you kind of go into detail on what those revenue conversations look like, and then kind of just your thought on the revenue sharing rules that are getting put into place here?
Yeah, so it's still out there, right? We don't know. I said this and I'll say it again, religion, politics, the portal, and NIL, I don't really have any interest in talking about it because nobody knows. We found out the portal is not really in place just recently. Revenue sharing, I think we all feel like we have an idea of what it's going to be, but we still don't. Until she signs off in April and whatever decision she makes based on the landscape is changing daily, nobody knows. So what the three of us were doing was putting our heads together and saying, okay, what can we do in preparation for this, even though that we really don't know what the standards will be at that time.
One of those things that it looks like you're preparing for is the 105-man roster limit. First of all, how difficult was it to have to essentially send players away? And it looks like you're probably not done with that at this point.
Yeah, as I said, it was the most difficult December for me ever for that reason. We've had 142 players on our roster last year, and we can all do the math. At some point, which we don't even know now when we have to be the 105. We don't know if it's June. We don't know if it's July. We're hearing that it doesn't have to be until the first game. So we haven't really been told when that has to happen. Eventually it's going to, but we don't know when that's going to be. So we have tried to be as fair and as upfront as possible with all the young men in our organization because they're important to us. Selfishly, the young men, some of them that we had to make cuts, for lack of a better term, were important to me because they love Oklahoma State, they love Oklahoma State football, and they just want to be a part of the team. And that side of it is eliminated. So we can discuss it and complain all we want, but I think that standard has been set. So all we can do now is move forward. Right now we're at about, we have 121 players that are going through off-season workouts. And at some point, June, July, or September, we will have to be at 105. And the final 15-ish decisions will be made sometime between now and when that happens based on how competitive can we make our locker room. Because whether we like it or not, that's what's happened in college football, is that I can only speak for Oklahoma State, but if you just look across the country, you guys follow this much closer than I do. It looks like everybody's trying to get their arms around as many people as they can to make their locker room more competitive, to find a way to win games this September. And that's what's going on right now. And it's a very unusual situation, but we don't make the rules. We're only following what we've been told to do.
You spoke after the game at Colorado about the need to settle position battles in the spring so you could really focus and refine things in fall camp. With so much turnover with the roster and the coaching staff, do you still feel the same way?
I don't know that I've had enough time to even think about that. I don't even remember saying that at that time, but I've had good discussions with Meach and Todd both, and they're just trying to figure out what's going on. You know, I thought you guys might want to talk to them today, so they're going to be in here in a little bit, but I don't want to speak for them, but they're probably going to tell you they don't know, they haven't seen these guys. Now, they've watched video, but they haven't seen them practice. They don't know much about them. They just started working out a week ago, so there won't be a lot come out about that, but that would be the plan. And then hopefully we can maintain the large majority of our roster through April to get to June workouts.
You haven't seen him in practice yet, but what do you like? What did you like about Haas Haney and then also overall your quarterback room?
Well, I mean, he falls in the same category. I mean, we're gathering players to try to make our locker rooms competitive as possible, and there wasn't a lot of video on him, other than one advantage we had is Coach Meacham had a better view of him than any of us did. And so we hung our hat on that.
Two more questions, we'll get to the coordinators.
Yeah, Mike, we didn't see your season that you just had coming. Nobody saw that coming. it's hard to see, unless you're Ohio State or somebody, it's hard to see what anybody's season is coming. Do you have any idea what kind of football team you're going to have?
There's so many new players that, as I said, I'm excited to get into spring and find out what we have. I'm hoping, Barry, that like at this time next year, it won't be so dramatic. We had a large number of 5th and 6th and 7th year seniors. So if we would have had a typical Oklahoma State season for me being here, we win 8 or 9 games, 10 games, we still would have had a big portal year because we had so many players moving out. And we all know this. We can't rely on gathering high school players and expect them to come in and play at a competitive level in the Big 12 next fall. So I don't think anybody knows. I can only speak for us. I don't know that we know what we're dealing with yet till we at least get out of spring ball. And I would think that a lot of head coaches will tell you that. When you have this many new players, we really don't know who we are until we get in spring ball and find out where we're at. We've watched players, we've evaluated them, we've seen them, but we're just learning who they are at this point.
Last one.
You can talk about Haas Haney and some of the guys, Rigby, some of the guys that are from big schools on there. But I'm always enamored with a guy like Brandon Rawls. And I kind of did a deep dive on him. He was recruited during the COVID era. He didn't get to camps. People didn't get to see him in high school. What do you know about that linebacker from Saginaw Valley State?
I'm going to look up his size here. I can see him. Yeah, let me look here. I don't see him, I guess. Oh, yeah. So we've got him at 6'2", 240. He's very, very physical. I watched him in the weight room yesterday, and he looks what you're supposed to look like. And the one thing that I would say that is encouraging about him that I've noticed, because we don't know anything else, is he's seems to have really good leadership ability and is willing to step out there and pull others along with him. But he does it in the right way, and the fact that he does it himself first before he's trying to pull others along with him. It's funny you mentioned him, because I've noticed about him over the last week.
Coach, anything else you'd like to say?
Good? All right, guys, thanks.
Defensive coordinator Todd Grantham. Coach, if you'd like to start us off with an opening
Sure.
statement about the program, next questions.
Absolutely. First of all, I'd like to thank Coach Gundy for allowing me to be a part of this Oklahoma State football program. Very excited to be here. When the opportunity came to have the chance to come here, did my research, and I've been very fortunate throughout my career. If you look just in college, I worked and played for Frank Beamer, who's a Hall of Fame coach. I've coached for Nick Saban, but really, when you look at Coach Gundy, he's the winningest coach in this school's history. And just 2 years ago, they were in the Big 12 championship game. So I always look at the history as the best indicator of the future. And just getting to know him, I was excited about being a part of the staff to bring that standard back, and really excited to be here. I'd also like to thank the entire athletic administration for making the transition very smooth for myself and our family. We look to embrace the community and, forward to getting to work. From a fan's perspective, I understand the passion that they have, and the desire they have to be successful. And really, that's our job right now, is to work. So I would just say, watch us work, and we're going to work to get better and improve and give the people of this community and this program something to be proud of. And that's really where we're moving right now. So with that, I'll take questions.
I watched your video. Obviously, Paige is kind of the coach of the household.
She actually runs it,
Yes,
okay?
I got
So
it.
she handles everything for me to allow me to do my job.
From the football standpoint, though, and you mentioned a few of them there when you first opened, who shaped you? Who shaped your opinion?
I think that as you go through coaching, I've been really fortunate. If you just look at the coaches, and I think you take a piece of each one and you become your own person, meaning if you go through the guys that I've had, you start with Frank Beamer. Frank was a guy that always believed in during tough times, you right the ship and you stay the course. Because if you look at his history, 6 years into his tenure, he wasn't very good. And to the credit of the athletic director at the time, Dave Brain, he's like, you're the right person, and we have to make some adjustments. And I was actually a GA at that time and was fortunate enough to be a part of the change. And he went on to be the winningest coach in school history and those kind of things. So you have him. Then you go to Nick Saban, and with Nick, that was probably the hardest transition of anything, meaning when I went from Nick to the NFL ranks, that transition was much easier. Going with Coach Saban, it's just his attention to detail. Not only in football, but also recruiting. In other words, your recruiting was just like an NFL board, like an NFL draft, meaning you had your players ranked. They were blocked off like, hey, these are, say, first-round guys. These are really third or fourth-round guys. These are guys that can contribute. So you had it broken down to be exact, and you had your numbers, and then based upon the way the recruiting process was going, you knew that did you have enough players in each position, okay? Then from a defensive standpoint, systematically, we do a lot of the same things that they do. Now, as the game has evolved and changed, we've adjusted that. So he's had a big impact on me, from that point as well. But then I think if you look, I've been around Vic Fangio, Dom Capers, even Mark Rick, when I went there, he was, so every guy that I've had around has given me a little bit of something. And at the end of the day, it gets down to people. So wherever you are, it's about the people. It's not necessarily say what we do, but it's kind of how we do it. And we're going to develop these guys. I really do think it gets down to relationships. I think relationships are more important than ever now. And I think your ability to make your players accountable, but also believe and trust in what you do, I think can allow you to let them grow and develop.
Do you think your NFL experience in terms of understanding putting a roster together and the different things that you did at that level is going to help you in this era of college?
Actually, I thought it really helped us in the this past portal from the standpoint of, I tried to watch all the guys that were coming back and kind of have a feel for them. And to me, it's always about a vision for each player. I don't think you can pigeonhole yourself into saying this player's this. There's a lot of guys that end up being wrong. They move positions and end up being really good players. So I think that you just kind of got an overview of the players, and then it got into looking at the players that were available and then trying to have a vision for how they would fit our scheme, okay? And then sometimes those guys could play more than one spot. So I do feel like that the transition in the portal and my experiences in pro football really allowed us to build the roster to give us some flexibility. We'll have packages where, the nickel might become a dime linebacker. A safety might drop down as a nickel. A corner could become a nickel. An inside backer may become an outside backer. So I think you got to have those flexibilities. That's why I think it's important. As coaches, you're teachers, and you have to have concepts to teach. And I think our ability to teach the concepts from now through the summer will allow us to have that flexibility come next season.
To work off of that flexibility, how would you describe your scheme? In terms of where it starts?
I think we're multiple. I think the thing of it is there's a couple things that, number one, and I think you want to keep it simple from the standpoint of you don't want people to run the ball, so you have to have the ability to stop the run. And at the end of the day, how do you affect the quarterback and make him play bad? I mean, if the quarterback doesn't play very good, your chances of winning aren't very good. So if we can eliminate the run, force him to throw it, and then when you get into, okay, making the quarterback play bad, well, what is that? Well, obviously pressure. You can pressure. It can be post-snap disguise, meaning, hey, we're showing one thing, and on the snap of the ball, it's going to be something else. Because if you look at the history throughout my career, we've always been very high in turnovers, and we've been high in interceptions. And that reason is one, making them one-dimensional, but then also trying to give the quarterback a picture, and then that picture tells him where to throw the ball. And then we want to take that picture away, and we want to get to where the ball is going to be thrown.
One of the things in watching your system, it looks like you try and put a personnel group out there that you can morph without subbing? And in tempo, with tempo being so prominent, talk about that.
Yeah, I think that you want to have the ability to be multiple, meaning I'm 4 down or 3 down. But within that personnel, I don't got to sub. Because if I sub and they know, well, you're going to 3 down, well, they're going to have their 3 down plays. So offenses are going to have they're going to have their plays relative to, all right, this is 4 down, these are our top plays, this is 3 down. So I think your ability to stay within a system and then from that go from 4 down to 3 down allows you to make it a little bit harder for them to have a beat on what you're doing.
You had a lot of relationships with the other defensive assistants coming in. Just how important was that for you? And I guess just familiarity.
Yeah, so first of all, I think it's important to hire the right people. I wanted people that, I knew their work ethic. I knew the type of people they were. I knew how they were going to handle our players and develop our players. Because, we're in a development business and we have to develop players. And I feel very strongly that each guy that we hired has the ability to enhance and allow guys to create more value for themselves, okay, both on the field and off the field. So I think that's very important. From a schematic standpoint, obviously having guys that have been in the system, you can kind of hit the ground running because they're used to the terminology and all that. So I think that allows you to be a better teacher to the players. So once we get started and we can work with the players, I think that foundation is there to be a better teacher early on, and you don't have as many adjustments to make.
College football changes crazy year to year now. You were out of college football for a couple of years. What's it like compared to what you left just 2 or 3 years ago?
College football is actually harder than pro football schematically. And the reason I say that is, one, in college football, tempo's tempo. Like in pro ball, we'd get our advanced scout and they'd say they go fast. I'm like, that's not fast. Like that's not fast. So there's a difference, okay? But it's all in what your perception is of what fast is. So you have that. The next thing is there are more formations in college because you can create unbalanced formations with all the receivers on the same side. So you have to adjust to that. And then the third element is the quarterback's ability to run the ball to create 11 on 11. I mean, if you watch even the last playoff game when Detroit and Washington was playing, the quarterback, running the ball became the difference in that game, for them. So those are the three. Now, in pro football, you obviously got the quarterback, you got skill, the passing game. That stuff's more advanced. But as far as structure of formations, tempo, handling the true 11 on 11 plays, you get challenged, in college football more. And I think the biggest thing is you've just got to be sound in what you're doing. I think there has to be consistency from day one in what you're doing so the players can learn. Because every player wants to do well. So it's, how do I get this guy to learn? And everyone's different. Some guys can see it and go do it. Some guys have got to see it, go do it, screw it up, see it again, go do it again. And it's that constant repetition. So at the end of the day, I think what you have to do, and this gets back to like the pro side of me, I think each player has to be, like, I don't think you can be a cookie cutter coach. I think you have to take a player and say, all right, this is this player's strengths. This is how he plays well. So how do we fit that within our system? And like, for example, when I was in Dallas with Wade, we had this one position, the guy was a Pro Bowler for me, and his backup couldn't handle the information I gave the Pro Bowler. So basically, I knew this guy had to play 20 plays, and I'm going to give him the information to allow him to play those plays. So I think you coach each guy differently based upon what they can handle, and then you try to look for the assets within the individual, and you put the things that he can do well and his strengths into your system to let him, make plays.
What about the other elements of college football? The portal.
Well,
but
all of that
roster.
So I don't really worry about all that because that gets into relationships. I mean, you have to develop relationships with players, and you have to show them the why. Like when Coach Gundy and I played, if the coach said run through the wall, like you ran through the wall. Didn't necessarily ask. Nowadays, they want to know why. So I still think it's the players. I think that you have to have a relationship with the player, okay? and develop that relationship to have that trust. Now, that doesn't mean that guys can't just leave. That can happen. But at the end of the day, if you have a relationship with that guy, because even in pro football, if a guy has a genuine, like if he knows, because up there it's your business. And in theory, the way it is now in college, it's your business. If this guy knows that, hey, this guy can extend my career, this guy can create more value in me, this guy can help me take the next step, well, they're going to listen and do what you ask them to do. So I think that all of the things you're talking about there, really the thing you can control as a coach is your relationship with the player and how I can create value for you.
How did you kind of go about talking to the current players that, that chose to stay from last year, and then also guys that, you might have had conversations with and ended up, portaling out or moving on?
So, each of us made a choice to be here. And really, when I looked at it, you have three types of players here right now, in the sense of you have guys that played here last year, okay, that chose to stay, so they obviously want to have success. You have guys that were here last year that redshirted, that didn't play, but believe in the program, want to be a part of it, and chose to stay. Then you have newcomers that have come in, and the newcomers have chosen to get developed here or enhance their career here by coming here. So we all have a common goal that this is the place we want to be. So that gets back to that, relationship thing. I think right now it's like you have to learn the guys in your room. Where's your hometown? What's your history? Who's your hero? What's your hardship? Because everybody's going to have a hardship. So if you just look at those things of each guy and get to know them, I think then you have a belief, if I'm lining up and I trust the guy beside me and believe in the guy, I'm going to play. So I think the biggest challenge you have now, in my opinion, is obviously you have a system you got to teach. But really it's the players getting to know each other and having that bond, that trust, that belief that we can come together, because there's strength in numbers. There's strength in power. There's strength in belief. And if you have that belief and you have that trust in each other, that allows you to create more synergy. And that's really what I think we're looking for.
You've got 5 guys listed here as outside backers. A lot of those guys would have been listed at defensive end previously. You talk about flexibility.
So they don't even call them outside backers in pro bowl. They're edge. So I would not look at a depth chart and worry about it. That means you will line up somewhere on the edge, meaning you could be an outside backer, you could be a defensive end. Some packages you might be a 3 technique. You're a player in our program. So I would not worry about depth charts. We're going to have 11 guys on the field, and then based upon situation, what we need out there, we'll put guys out there. So defensive ends could play end, could play tackle, could possibly be an outside backer down the road. Outside backers could be somewhere along the edge. So that's just a depth chart for you to be able to look at. We're going to play with 11 and figure out how to get the 11 on the field.
What were you looking for from guys when you were both transfers that ended up signing here and coming here, and guys that didn't? What were you kind of looking for when you attacked the portal?
Well, so I think first of all, when you say, hey, what are the traits you look for? First of all, you have to have a certain amount of ability. You got to have ability to play. Now, and this is why guys are 2nd-round picks, 6th-round picks. I think the biggest thing is what's your vision for the player? So, how does this guy fit with what we're going to do? Okay? So you look at the ability. Then I think you really want to try to get to know his competes. Because, it's a competitive field. It's competitive. And it requires, hey, you may have to, you're getting up at 6 a.m. to go lift, to go work out, to go train, and doing those kind of things. So what kind of competes do you have to be a better player? Okay? So I think you want to look at their ability, then you want to look at their competes. Then I think it's important that they have respect. Okay? The reason I say that in this day and age is because you have to respect coaching, because that's what's going to make you better. You got to respect the player next to you, because that's your teammate. You got to respect the leaders on this team, because that's what our team is. We got to be one. Now, we may not always agree, but at the end of the day, we got to believe in this, and this is what we're going to do. So you got to have respect. And I think the biggest thing that you kind of got to figure out as you go and you watch a little bit and you can tell on tape, but you got to be a problem solver. You have the ability to solve problems. I mean, if I'm an edge rusher and this guy is always getting his inside hand on me and pushing me by the quarterback, how am I going to stop? How am I going to prevent that? If I'm a corner and, hey, man, I can't really cover this guy, but I know my help is inside and deep, how do I leverage this guy or how do I play this guy? So you got to be a problem solver, to be able to play this day and age. So I think some of that stuff you don't 100% know the answers to, but I think as you have your vision for the player, you kind of look to build your roster based upon those characteristics. And obviously guys will be smart, but the thing with smart is you just got to have guys that are conscientious because everybody learns a different way. You guys got to have, if they have that competes and that desire, we're going to teach them what to do.
What are some of the specifics of these next couple days and weeks as you and the other coaches get ready for spring?
Yeah, I think that early on we're allowed to, kind of introduce our system to them. So I think that being able to get them on the board, being able to show them, structurally the system and how they fit and kind of walk through those things. So that way, if we can walk through those concepts and that terminology and stuff over the next little bit, once spring practice gets here, they've already heard it a couple times. So that allows them to go play a little faster during spring practice. So that allows us to evaluate their true athletic ability, their physicality, and those kind of things, rather than, is he thinking too much? So I think it's just the familiarity with learning the system to allow you to play fast in the spring.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, guys. Thanks.
Coordinator Doug Meacham. So, Coach, if you'll start us with an opening statement about coming back to the program, take some questions.
Yeah, just bottom line, I played here. I'm from this area. It means a lot to me to be back here again. This is like my fourth rotation back through here as a player, a GA, a full-time coach, and then coming back here as the OC. It just means a great deal to me. And there's a lot of guys that sit in that room with me that are kind of just like me in terms of they played here and a lot of good energy and just really excited.
What were you looking for in your hires?
Well, there's several ways to look at that. One, you want guys that are really good with people, that are good with players, that can manage their players. You want guys that can recruit. And along the way, just happen to get lucky and get a few guys that actually played here as well. And to me, that was kind of big to get that kind of vibe going in the room. And I think because we have some of those guys in place, it's just going to bleed out through the whole room. I think everybody's on board, everybody's excited, and just I think in that room particularly, because we've been in there a lot lately, just trying to put together offense and defense and whatever. But it's just a really, really good vibe. We haven't played a game yet, we haven't lost it yet, so everybody's it's all good, but it feels really good.
Coach, because of your experience with power, with play action pass, and then your deep.
You're doing plays on me, Robert?
No, I'm not doing plays, but also your deep knowledge of the spread. You were in kind of a little bit on the ground floor of that back when you were in Georgia military.
Yeah.
Does that make you, because of everything being so widespread on offense now, make you a good offensive coordinator because you can do different stuff?
You're going to adapt first. Everybody has this set of plays they love. I have stuff I really like, but it depends on what you have. Can you do it or not? And then if you have to tweak it to make it fit, you have to do it as well. That's part of what we do is adjust, adapt, figure out a way what we're good at, what our personnel is, and then figure out from that what are good plays. It may be stuff that I haven't even had experience with, but it all depends on what we have. Like you got a pocket quarterback opposed to a runner. You got an athletic O-line opposed to a humongous O-line. You have a 6'4" fade guy opposed to just twitchy, fast guys. You kind of have to develop based on that. But, we're going to have to assess all that and figure it out. I have all the stuff I like, I'm comfortable with, but we may not be any good at it. So we'll have to figure what that is. Just kind of like high school guys. because the transition these days with people in and out, I don't think you can sit there and just say, hey, we're running this no matter what. You got to figure out what your personnel is, and that's one of our biggest jobs is figuring out what we can do and assessing your roster and developing a roster of what you have and then deciding what you want to run.
You mentioned the type of quarterback that you have, and you've got a lot of guys you're going to be looking at in
again, with the quarterback stuff, I don't know. We've kind of met them and talked to them, and there's not a ton of film on any of them particularly, so it's going to be fun just to watch it sort itself out.
You looking back over your career, you've had a lot of mobile guys. You've had a couple of years where you didn't. Do you have a preference what you like to
Well, if you have a pocket guy, you got to have that one receiver that can make it happen. Like with Whedon, he could sit in there and make it happen because he had a 2-time Biletnikoff Award winner. If you're not particularly, dominant in that area, you probably like a guy that can move around a little bit. And if you got both, then that's lightning in a bottle. So that's kind of what we had at TCU those couple of years. We had Trayvon and those guys as receivers. It was kind of like the best of everything. So that's ultimately what you want. A guy can process, throw it from the pocket, and assess secondaries and whatnot, and get you in and out of correct plays, but also can kind of take off and ad lib and make stuff happen.
Last thing I have, you are the offensive coordinator. I'm guessing you could have not done a position. You could have just been the coordinator.
Yeah.
But you choose the coach position. You've done that every time you've called plays and been a coordinator. Why? You like it?
I like being involved in it and being a part of a particular group to kind of lean on. It's just, I don't think I've ever not had a position. So with Gary, he had me do special teams too. That may have been a little much for me because I didn't really do much of the team stuff. But yeah, I just feel like I'm more a part. I'm not on the sideline watching. I just like to be a part of kind of the instruction. And to me, that's what's fun as a coach, to be able to, you teach a kid and he doesn't quite get it and all of a sudden the light comes on. That's what's fun about coaching. And so just sitting back and assessing and watching everybody else do it, I just felt like I was on the sidelines a little bit. So I just like to be involved with the position too. Yeah.
What can you tell us about Haas Haney having him last year?
Yeah, I don't know. Like I said, he didn't play much last year, so we're going to have to figure out Haas out. You know what I mean? Like, I saw what he did at practice and stuff, but, he didn't play much. There's not a lot of samples of him, so I don't see him any different than the rest of the guys. Like, we're going to have to figure him out. If he's the guy that is the most knowledgeable, the most comfortable, then he'll be the guy. If he's not, then he'll be somebody else.
Seems like a real athletic runner for sure.
Yeah, I think he ran a 10.6 800 meters, so he can scoot. But, can he process? Can he solve the puzzle on the back end? Can he get us in and out of plays? Can he, it's the same thing all these guys have to be able to do. So we'll see.
Doug, you've seen OSU win a bunch. You were here for a lot of the wins. You played against Cowboys last year's season. The bottom fell out. What do you see where the program is? What makes you think you can win again?
Yeah, I just think about the 18 straight bowl games we went to, and a year ago, you're in the Big 12 championship game. Everybody in the day's game, it's a lot of this. Look at Alabama. Look at some of these teams. It's a lot of this. It's not going to be the same thing. We just reload every year because of the movement and things like that. So, not making excuses, and I'm just kind of focused moving forward. I'm not really looking at what happened last year. I'm looking at how can we get better and get where we want to be, more so than looking at what happened last year to me. You know what I mean? So,
how did you approach kind of rebuilding or not rebuilding, but finding new players, both from the transfer from high school and then also got kind of building relationships with the guys that were coming back?
Are you talking about the guys that are here now, or the guys that came in new?
Both. Like how building an offensive roster.
Well, you want big and fast. Okay, because if you miss on a big fast guy, then you know how you missed on a big fast guy. If you miss on a slow, small guy, it makes you feel a little not as fun. You know what I mean? So, bottom line is you want bigger, faster, twitchier, and then at the same time you want guys that are smart and can learn football, that enjoy the process. The stuff that's not measurable is what we have to do a good job of. Anybody can see measurables and 40s and all that stuff and how far they can jump and all that business. It's what's on the inside. That's what we have to decide. And, what kind of kid, what's his background? You know what I mean? How does he learn? Can he learn? And ultimately, in today's game, with all the transition again, you want guys that can think and enjoy the process as much as anything. You know, if you got a big, fast guy that can't learn, it's 3-2-1 and we're playing a game. Well, that don't do anyone any good. So there's a fine line there, but that's part of what we do is try to figure out, you know, who those guys are, and at the same time have the capabilities, the measurables, and the speed, and put it all together.
You think you kind of met what you were looking for back in, you know?
No one ever has enough.
Yeah.
You know, we'd take 5 more. You know what I mean? But I think we did well with the short amount of time we had to work on it. And like when I first got here, we wasn't fully staffed at that point, and we were right in the middle of it. So no excuses. I mean, we did a pretty good job taking some of the guys we got, and I think all areas included. You know, we kind of addressed every particular position that we have, and yeah, I mean, you got another rotation of it in April. We'll see what happens.
You've been around this league a long time.
20 years.
How has defense evolved in the Big 12 Conference specifically?
Well, I think, you know, it's not long ago guys kind of lined up and showed you what they were going to play. You know, nowadays it's a total disguise. Every snap's a disguise. You know, you're going to see uneven safeties. Well, that just usually meant rotation in that direction. Well, now it means they'll show this uneven, go the other way. They'll show a blitz one side, bring it the other to get you ID away from it. There's just a lot more of the whole 3-down defense, 4-down, all intertwined together, where typically if you're a 3-down team, you're 3-down. And they'd bring an extra guy, a fourth rusher from somewhere. Now you're seeing the whole 4-down versus 3-down. It happens from series to series or play to play. A lot of different rotational stuff. And you got all the stuff that Iowa State brought to the table with the 3 safety business, with the robbers and all that business. So it's just super multiple. Some of the pre-snap stuff for quarterbacks gets a little dicey because of all that, you know, disguise. So I think you have a whole lot more of that than before. And quite honestly, it's, you know, you can't just sit there and play cover 4 all day long because somebody's going to run a dig and a post behind it and you're going to score. It's going to be fun, but they kind of got tired of it. So I think Iowa State, what they did, you know, what was that, 7 or 8 years ago when they started that thing, that kind of bled into this league and changed a lot of the things. And then just going back and forth with the 4-down, 3-down business and those hybrid edge guys you just didn't see, you know, like the Lawrence Taylor style guy, like he's an edge guy in the boundary, stand up and he's dropping. A lot more of that business. So it's just a lot more multiple. So you got to find plays that are all purpose, or you're just going to sit there and check every snap, you know. So find all purpose plays that you can get up there and just snap the thing and get on about your business. And sometimes it's not going to be the perfect play, but if you sit there and play chess with these guys now, it's just, man, it's hard to win, you know. So that's kind of what our MO is in terms of, you know, the defenses and how it's changed.
I don't know how many guys Sonny had on the roster. Mike had 142 here last year. From a preparation, especially a preparation standpoint, the scout teams,
Yeah.
does the 105 roster limit, is that a little scary?
Yeah, I don't know. That's going to be interesting. I know the NFL does it with 53. So I don't know. You know, how do you do that? I guess, they get like 15 P squad guys and they have 53 roster guys and they self-serve. I mean, obviously it works. I don't know. I think we're probably a little bit spoiled having 150 guys out there, but no, we'll figure it out. That's our job, is to figure it out. That's a good question because I'm not sure. I think we'll probably have to do a little bit more self-serve, like 1s versus 2s, and we give them looks and things like that. But it can't be that big a deal with what goes on in the NFL, you know. So we'll figure it out.
How much of a priority was it to bring in a fourth quarterback?
How much what?
How much of a priority was it to get the fourth quarterback in?
I don't know if it's a major priority, but it was available to us at the time, and we just took a shot at it. I mean, it's like baseball. If you don't have a starter, you have no chance, you know. If you don't have a quarterback, it's hard, you know. It's hard. Coaching's maybe a little overrated, you know. Sometimes it's players, but you got to have a QB that can function, whatever that is, you know. If it's throwing, running, whatever, you got to have somebody that can pull the trigger, you know.
Lack of experience for all of them, would you say they're all kind of in?
No, I think I look at it the other way. It's like going and you're going to a peach field and you're taking them off the ground, or you're taking them off the tree. You know what I'm saying? We got 4 guys that are on a tree. We're just picking it right off there. We can form them, make them whatever we want to.
Right. I mean, would you say they all have like an even playing field to?
Yeah, absolutely, 100%, even 100.
2 more questions?
How did you want to come back here now at this time? Was there any, I know.
Because Mike called me and asked me to? No. No, I you know, like I said, I've been doing this 30 some odd years, and to circle back here after all the years, I mean, how lucky am I? to be able to come back to your alma mater at this stage of my career. It was a no-brainer, just the luckiest guy there is in football, period, for me.
Did you think this opportunity had passed you? Because you'd been you were on the staff when.
Yeah, I think anybody, you get my age and you're not exactly in charge per se. I mean, you start thinking like that. And there was other options. I was looking at maybe NFL or some other stuff and trying to move forward, but this worked out, and I just can't thank Coach Gundy enough for giving me the opportunity, having that kind of trust in me, to come in here and get the arrow pointing in the right direction.
Thanks, guys. We'll have Chad Weiberg available next.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. How about the Cowgirls?